And a very good evening to you. Tonight, we have a program that's going to be dealing with accountability and transparency. Featuring on this program would be Mr. Veerasammy Ramayya, attorney at law, Mr. Timothy Jonas. I nearly said Dr. Timothy Jonas because he looks so doctoral. And I'm your host, Adam Harris. We would be with you for about 90 minutes and we're going to be discussing a series of issues. One of the issues we're going to be dealing with, accountability, and this would have to do with how we perceive the government operating, dealing with issues that I suppose could raise questions. Without much delay, I would like to ask Mr. Jonas to let's look at the system of accountability as it operates now.
Hi, Adam. Good evening. Veerasammy, good to see you.
Good to see you, sir.
I am sorry to have come on at the last minute like that. Normally, your host gives me a call to patch me in, and it didn't happen. And in a panic, I looked for you at the last minute. I saw the call had started. I'm glad all's well. It ends well. Adam, you're laughing at me already, Dr. Harris.
No, man,
Good
come
to see you.
on.
You look
I can't laugh
doctor
at you.
yourself.
I will laugh at you, my friend. You're like a son to me.
As you know, transparency is my bugbear in Guyana. It's one of the things that bothers me a lot, and it's something I talk about over and over. And the solution to Guyana's problems is transparency. The source of Guyana's problems is lack of transparency. And everything boils down, every act of corruption boils down to lack of transparency. Things that are done in the sunlight, in full view of everybody, are well done. It's those secret deals that hurt us. The people you see suddenly getting rich by inexplicable means, the people who get jobs, who lose jobs by quiet means under the table deals, the contracts that are awarded, sole sourced, paid up front, not performed, nobody asks about it. That is what hurts Guyana. And we can do all the finger pointing in the world, but we have a culture of that. The culture starts with each of us. There isn't a Guyanese who drives on the road that will not admit, that will not, if forced to, have to admit to some kind of compromise with some kind of policeman who threatened to take him down to the famous station. There are very few Guyanese who are above that. Guyanese businessmen who gotta import goods, they have to deal correctly with customs, and that is also culture and tradition to the point that it's not even a secret. There's corruption in every avenue, every area, and that is what destroys our economy, and it is what makes us a mean, small, hypocritical society. And we have to find a way to make our systems transparent. Our systems will not be transparent where one party runs the country single-handedly, appoints family and friends to all the positions, and then there is no scrutiny until, by some miracle, there's a change of government and it all explodes like a nuclear bomb. And you see prosecutions and parade of shame before the courts and that kind of thing of previously important people. It's all about transparency.
Mr. Ramayya?
Good night, both Mr. Jonas and Mr. Harris. But let me take this opportunity, Mr. Jonas, that I want to compliment you, and that is true transparency, for the fight that you took for that 5 months to allow our democracy to flourish in Guyana. You put your party aside and you put the people first, plus all the other small parties that took up the mantle with the PPP to see that our democracy is preserved. And the fight was well documented, was well performed by you and others. And this is something that tonight I have the opportunity to join you with some of the things that is bothering me as well. And as I recalled, when I was the REO with the coalition, there were so many things that happened. But because I was not afraid to speak out, and the way that you mentioned about the transparency here and accountability was with contracts. And when contracts are given out, I can't see where the transparency was there. Somebody came from Georgetown and they give just an estimate for New Amsterdam Hospital. The air condition was condensing and water was dropping in the theater. It's a very good example. Brand new hospital, well wired, but again, we had a person came from Georgetown to New Amsterdam and charged $1 million just to give an estimate the amount it will cost to rewire the hospital. And I was amazed. We had 7 septic tanks and they charged $1.8 million around there to discharge it, to empty it out. But as the REO, I was questioning myself, should I sign the documents for the payment? And I said no. I was not consulted, and this was one of the problems where the government of the day was telling me that you cannot criticize a government that you work for. And I talked to Moses, I spoke to Kemraj, and I said, well, how is it that we were able to form the AFC? How was it that we were able to form this coalition? And I was not a part of the coalition. I only followed the protocol of that coalition, but I was never in agreement. The very stand that you took, I took that when I stood against the PPP, and I brought them to Berbice, and we promised the people that, look, we are not going to join hands with the PPP or the PNC. And for some reason, these people were not truthful. And if we want transparency, as you have indicated from your opening remarks, then it has to come with some form of honesty. And we don't have that. I will tell you what some of the things that took place during that period of time. Contracts were given, millions of dollars of contracts. And I have witnessed that where the vice chairman will go and pass the job, not the civil engineer. And today I asked someone very knowledgeable if they understand what is the agreement between the government and the contractor and the work that they have to do within the community, the infrastructure work. The bill of quantity, Mr. Harris, the bill of quantity was never questioned. Whether if the specifications are 4 inches of tar, 2 inches of crush and run, so much white sand. But I know I did work and I was do some construction work too in United States. Every step that you take, and this is where accountability and transparency is concerned. We have to look now, who are the people passing this work that millions of dollars are not properly spent on the work that they are doing. It is not transparent in my vision at all. You're supposed to get your engineers to go and inspect that work stage after stage. Make sure that the specifications are met, and that part of the job must be performed according to what the contract states. But in our society, even during the PPP time, during the 5 years of the coalition, That part of it was never executed. And when you start to question these things, that the bad elements, then how can we say that this is transparency? Now, we had Mr. Mangal, Ms. Janki, and we coming back now to the Exxon with the oil. We need not a politician to discuss our oil. We need people who are expert to be.
We will have a segment. We will have a
Yes,
segment to deal with the
but
oil issue.
I will just show you that the transparency is not coming to that aspect. And this is where I will take you with the first thing that we look at, the taxpayers. They are looking for something that the taxes must be properly utilized. Accountability must be given to the people and the lower level. I came back here since 1993, and I'm living in a grassroots level, and I can tell you the plights of the people. And what Mr. Jonas is talking about, we cannot allow a society to fall up because of a few. We have to stand up and we have to go forward, that people must get their money's worth in any given society. In any given, look, there is a situation in Nigeria where one person got $6 billion US from the oil, and 96 million people are suffering under poverty. Is that transparent? And this is what our country, we have resources, but transparently, how do we utilize that? Is it transparent that we can stop things from happening? And what I really want to, that we must have an overlook body to overlook what is going on in Guyana. Because sometimes it's very difficult to get to a minister, like the PUC, the Public Utility Commission. That is more transparent to the people on the ground than we have to struggle to get to a minister to vent our concern. Because if from the regional level we cannot get what we want, how do we get our problem solved? This is very important for us to look at in very detailed way.
Now, Mr. Jonas talked about transparency, or in the case of some of the actions that we took. For example, depends on which figures you're using and who you're listening to. There were some 700 plus dismissals from various sections of the public service. The argument was that these were political appointees. But there was no reason given. We didn't know if these persons were performing or whether they were just there drawing pay. What we know is that they were dismissed. They were given letters of termination. In one case, a permanent secretary got a letter that more or less terminated her service until the Guyana Public Service Union challenged the authority of Ms. Gail Teixeira to terminate, and then she said, no, it's a mistake and all of that. Mr. Jonas, let us look at the dismissals. Was there any explanation for the spate of dismissals that would have made the whole system transparent, or transparent as you say? Your microphone is muted.
Sorry. There was absolutely no transparency in the dismissals. But that starts the conversation in the middle, and you need to start the conversation at the beginning. I've seen a lot said this go round, this cycle of elections, where the APNU supporters are saying that the spate of dismissals is a large racist conspiracy to keep Afro-Guyanese down, that certain people, quotes, have this view that Black Guyanese mustn't get ahead, and it's become a race issue. And that is not without justification, because we have two race parties. The reason I say is starting the conversation in the middle is that 5 years ago, the same thing happened. So when 5 years ago, Baradindial and Ashley Onarine got thrown out of GPL to be replaced, and Winston Brassington and Marcy Nadir Sharma got thrown out of NISIL to be replaced, and go down and down and down. Gaiwa was replaced with Barnum's son-in-law. Central Housing was replaced. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. There was a clean sweep in 2015. In 2020, there's a clean sweep. Both are equally blameworthy, both are equally harmful, both equally polarized. And both have their source at two race-based parties whose members perpetuate race politics, and therefore the victims often, because of their political alliance, happen to be of one race or the other. That is the ugliness of our politics. So let's start the conversation at the beginning, that our problem started because we have two ethnic parties in a population with two ethnic bases. I would like to talk about how to solve it.
All right. One classic case had to do with the termination of the services of Mr. Vincent Adams, a highly qualified person in the oil and gas sector and all of that. And the president himself on one occasion said, well, he was Alliance for Change, which suggested that his political alliance was ground for termination. In a country the size of Guyana, with limited skills, can we afford to isolate skilled people because of their ethnicity or because of their political allegiance? Let me ask Mr. Ramayya to answer that one.
Mr. Adams, it is true what Mr. Jonas is saying, that because of the polarization in our country and the two-party state that we have, you will find this. But wherever you have a transition of a new government, you will always find that people within the ministry or even the permanent secretary or the regional executive officer, you will always find this change. And this is one of my big concerns here. Are we doing the right things? We need people, especially in a small country, people who are there, who are experienced, who are productive, that we should keep them. And I agree that this two-state politics that we have, this two-party state, we have to change the perception. We have to change the politics of this country. And that is when we have the young people. And I always mention that I believe in a third force, because we got to break this iceberg that we have. But however, the problem is not something that we can solve overnight. And right now in the United States, for example, look what is happening there. It's a new team of people coming, so much female coming with this new administration, with Biden. And the same problems you're going to find in any country. They have their political affiliates. They want to give them a job, and they must be qualified. But I do not subscribe, to be honest, that if someone is productive in that capacity, that we should utilize that experience and put our politics aside for the benefits of the country. So again, a lot of people were given jobs, even if they are not wanted. And I have experienced that when I was with the coalition. Highly educated Indians were laid off, were given the pink slip, so to speak. And that is not right. And that is where they perpetrate deep down into the minds of people. We are not taking the issues. We are fighting race politics, ethnic politics in this country. We are not going on the issue. And I will subscribe right now on this program that I hope the changes will come, that we give people who deserve the position and not based upon the political affiliation to any political party, whether which party you belong, whether PNC, AF, whatever it may be, but to give that person a chance to prove themselves. And if they don't, then we can take an action that will benefit that position. But I will have to subscribe to what Mr. Jonas is saying. We have to now look deeper the way we conduct that office and how we employ people, and we must employ people not on the relationship or people who are affiliated to a party, but people who can perform in that capacity. That is my take.
That brings us to the issue of what some people talk about, the ethnic cleansing. In the wake of the declaration of the election on the 2nd of August, there were some private criminal charges filed against some people. Each of these people was of a particular ethnicity. Many of them were held by the police and detained in the lockups. Now, Mr. Jonas, as a lawyer, was the idea to lock up these people, even if it was for the mandatory 72 hours, discriminatory?
Again, Adam, I'm afraid you're starting the conversation in the middle, but we're going to end up disjointed because I think we've jumped too fast from what my friend Mr. Ramayya was talking about. But I'm going to answer your question because it's something that is another bugbear of mine. Every single arrest which has been made, in my opinion, has been wrongly done. The most fundamental, important, central right any of us have, after our right to life, is our right to liberty. The worst thing someone can do is kill you. The next worst thing you can do is lock you up. And for that reason, the legal structure as drafted, as contained in the Constitution, and as lawfully implemented, protects your liberty at all costs. A policeman should not be arresting you unless it's absolutely necessary. I actually, in a few weeks, I've promised someone long ago, and it's a difficult task, so I've been procrastinating. But I'm going to do a lecture on this program in a few weeks about the police powers of arrest. You see, long ago, you get charged with witchcraft, and they send you down in the dungeon, and they burn you with hot irons until you admit. And when you admit, they go and cut off your head or they burn you at the stake. Things have not changed very much. When I was a young student, doing first year law, I did criminal law. I had a wonderful lecturer, a man named Peter Britton, senior counsel, dead now. And the first class, Peter Britton smilingly stood up at the front of the class and said, if the police ever arrest you, take your licks, don't talk. Take your licks, but don't talk. If you look at how many people are imprisoned, people are put before the courts, not on evidence, but on a confession, you should be very, very scared, very alarmed. Because if I go and I kill my brother Ramayya, I'm not confessing, and yet maybe 40% of our murder convicts are convicted on a confession. Doesn't that worry anybody? So we have a right, and the police have an obligation when they arrest you to say to you, to inform you, you have a right not to say anything. That anything you say can be used against you. You have a right to shut up, like Mr. Britton said, shut up, take your licks. And yet they will barefacedly go to the public and say, we arrest Christopher Jones for questioning. We arrest the other one, Duncan, for questioning. The other day, James Bond, for questioning. How can it be lawful to arrest somebody, to ask them a question that you have no right to ask them because they have a right to be silent? So every last one is unlawful in my view. But half the country laughs, the other half sit and wait for their turn. And Adam, I'll remind you, we saw two people, Winston Brassington and Ashley Singh, who, when charges were filed against them, flew back to Guyana to face those charges voluntarily and were put in shackles by the police and paraded up and down. So don't start the conversation in the middle. Let's have the conversation start at the beginning.
And the beginning, Mr. Ramayya.
I want to add something, what Mr. Jonas is saying there, because the officers, whether if they have directives from the minister or whosoever they are, but if they know the law as well, and Mr. Jonas is a very good attorney, your rights should not be infringed upon. The first thing that should be done, that you have a right when they question you to have a lawyer there to be present. That is your right. But in many cases, I will say about 90% of the cases, they will refuse to give you a phone call. They will refuse you to have a lawyer present there when they will question you. And in many cases, when I was in Berbice during that 5 years, I will tell you, people were beaten by the police officers to give a confession. And you know, sometimes when they do that, they fill the books that the crime was solved, and the innocent people are in jail. And this is, we have to revolutionize the whole legal system to protect innocent people. And this is where this program is such an important aspect, that we have to deal with this program, this problem, that people's rights should be read to them. They should be protected. You're innocent until proven guilty. But as far as I am concerned, if you're arrested, you're already guilty. You're already guilty, and that should not be in our system. Now, we have to start somewhere, and Mr. Jonas is saying we should not start from the middle. I experienced something during the British time when I was in jail. I was locked up by the British soldiers for doing nothing. But I was in jail. This is something that we have to learn. We can't come down with from the imperial days to current situation of 2021. We have to change our legal system. We have to make sure that our forces are well trained, understand the law. Look, if you go in the traffic today, your rights are not being read to you. Give me your license. They will charge you. But if you put the money in the license, there's no charge. This is the corruption that is going on currently now. And this is what we have to stop. This is where people will have to take, and Mr. Jonas is one of them. I look up to him. That we have to go forward by changing our people, our policemen, our soldiers, whosoever they are in law enforcement. You have to do the right thing. You have to serve the people in that capacity, that you are wearing this uniform, not to exploit, but to protect our society. And this is important to me.
This brings us then to the question of the transparency of the judiciary. How transparent is our judiciary, bearing in mind that, as Mr. Jonas said, many people went to jail on questionable confessions. I also know that judges have been known at the end of a voir dire to throw out some of those confessions. How, should I say, efficient is our judicial system then? Mr. Jonas?
Well, we like to give people to make bricks, but we don't give them straw. And I think that we have to look at it in that context. When I was admitted to the bar 20 odd years ago, 25 years ago, we, the legal fraternity, were not doing right by the society. A matter would take years to come up to be heard. I'm talking civil law. We could talk criminal law as well. When you go to appeal, an appeal would take years to be heard, so that you would have 10, 15 years before so-called justice is done. Often people would die before their matters are heard. That was disgraceful. I was embarrassed for the legal fraternity, and I was a baby lawyer. That has improved dramatically in the last, I would say, 5 years. With the change in the civil procedure, things have gone much better. Led from the front by our Chancellor and Chief Justice, who are two hardworking people. The judicial culture has changed. They don't tolerate the kind of laziness and sloth that was characteristic of the profession 10, 15 years ago. You file a matter now, you will have it heard in 6 months, 8 months, and you will have satisfaction. It is good. There are a couple bottlenecks, but they're being ironed out. On the criminal side, it has been just as bad with even worse consequences, because now you're dealing with people who are in the lockups, people who are in jail, people whose liberty you're affecting. And I remember a few years ago, 6, 7 years ago, Justice George was just a puny judge at the time. She wasn't yet Chief Justice. And on a criminal assizes, she learned that there were people languishing in Camp Street Prison on charges. And every cycle, when matters should be coming up to be put before a jury, these people were being bypassed. And when she found out why, it was because in the DPP's office, they were not satisfied with the evidence they had against these people. So they were put down for the next cycle. These people languishing in jail. And she called up several, and a lot of people got let out because the DPP's office had to admit they had no evidence against these people. Witnesses had migrated, had died. You know, for me, I wish there was a criminal charge that I could lay against some of those people in the DPP's office to put them in that same lockup. Because I do not know how you go to sleep comfortably in your bed, knowing that you have allowed a system to keep someone in the lockups when you have no evidence to convict them. But to her credit, Justice George saw that. She did her best to fix it. There was an Amerindian gentleman who famously learned to speak English in Camp Street lockups. That bad. So it has been bad, but it is improving. We need more judges. We need better trained police. You see, the police are the first step of filtering. When you have a car accident now, the police will charge both drivers. They exercise no discretion. They don't use their brain to try and decide who's right and who's wrong. And of course, it's to their benefit because something might end up in their pocket. They'll charge both. That places a huge burden on a magistrate. The police is there on the ground. He must have a sense of who's right and who's wrong, who to charge. If he charges both, the magistrate work doubles. The caseload doubles in the magistracy. The same policeman is not coming to give the evidence he should be given, and the whole process starts to collapse. The whole system is overburdened. So we have to fix the system at each stage that it is problematic, but there are improvements.
That brings us to the point, and I'll go to Mr. Ramayya. I see someone ask a question, when will they arrest me? The appointment of judges rests with the Judicial Service Commission making recommendations, but the final appointment rests with a government, to wit, a president. How compromised is the system when there is such a system? Mr. Ramayya?
Well, I don't think there should be a compromise. I just listening to Mr. Timothy when he was given senior counsel, and I think that is owed to him with the number of years that he practiced. We have to consider the individual, the work that this person is doing within the judicial system. And it has to come with some merit. And to appoint somebody on a political affiliation, I think we are not going to have a good legal system. It must be open. Some of the things that I have, for example, I have Mr. Nigel Hughes. And I thought that if this is a political thing, why he was not given a senior counsel during the coalition government. I just want to touch on another point with this whole thing here, with the lack of evidence, but yet you are in prison for 5-6 years sometimes for a murder charge. Why it takes the police and the prosecutor in that police station, within that vicinity, which station you are charged with, to do a thorough investigation. And I will tell you, I studied criminality in the United States in college. A lot of people, and Mr. Jonas will verify that are in jail today who are innocent. How do we deal with somebody? We take 5 years in incarceration, and then at the end of that 5 years, there is no evidence, and the person goes free. What happened to that person in 5 years in confinement? And all these things, we are far back to the 21st century. But the question is now, Mr. Harris, are we going to live in the same time? Are we going to change? Are we going to improvise on the things that's supposed to be? We have to look at other countries, how they operate. And we have to start now to improvise on the system that we have. We inherit a bad system. What you cannot tell me that we don't have room to change the system. Changes are evident, and changes must come. I don't know if an innocent man got to spend 5-6 years in lockup at New Amsterdam prison, then before go on trial. Where is the evidence to put that man in that lockup? Now, you have to take that file, as Mr. Jonas said, to DPP. Why is it you have an attorney, you make your presentation, but yet you spend all these years behind bars? I don't think that is fair. So we need a speedy form of do the investigation, to come up with the evidence and charge the person. Don't delay, because you're talking about somebody's life, somebody who left a family with children, and they are the breadwinner of the home, and they got to be penalized. And they are innocent at the end. We should not wait 5 years. This is my opinion. We have to revolutionize the system in a very drastic way to get our people and our country go forward.
The same question, Mr. Jonas, where the government plays an integral role in appointing judges. There was the case of Mr. James Buffel Frakes, I remember, who was recommended by the Judicial Service Commission. And it took a protest or the threat of a protest before the government yielded. Should the government be involved in the appointment of judges?
It took more than the threat of a protest. It took litigation. My firm was involved.
Okay.
You see, you're right. Under the administration before 2015, some judges were recommended. What governments like to, let me speak of our government, what our government likes to do by maintaining control is they won't confirm the judge in his position. So he's given an acting position, and you have this like a knife hanging over him or her, that you're not confirmed. You can be fired at any time. So you, first of all, eroded the independence of the judiciary, because it cannot now be said that this man or woman can make his decisions free from influence or free from fear, because he could be fired. But you maintain that control, and that's what happened with that gentleman. And in fact, there was another judge involved as well. It was only when litigation was filed that the government of the day confirmed him in his post as a judge. But Adam, again, we keep forgetting we have two evil twins running this country. Because in the last 5 years, we had 4 acting judges appointed by the Judicial Service Commission. And in the last 5 years, they were allowed to continue in their acting appointments. They were not confirmed, and 2 of them were confirmed. And I don't even need to tell you how to pick 2. So the judiciary needs to be confirmed in their position. If you're appointed by the Judicial Service Commission, you need to be confirmed. The 2 parties have been so determined to maintain their grasp that they got together, put their heads together, and agreed that no chancellor must be appointed unless both of them say so. So we haven't had a chancellor or a chief justice confirmed in office since then, because they must control it. It cannot be, if in any democracy which respects the separation of powers, that the executive have that kind of say as to who is a judge and who's not a judge, and who is promoted and who is not promoted. That needs to be removed. Up to now, the Judicial Service Commission has not been constituted so that new people can be appointed, because the government is so determined to have control. It's really a terrible situation.
That brings us.
Mr. Harris, a judge.
Oh, I see you get back lights. Congratulations.
Yes, a judge was not supposed to be appointed with the political affiliation to a party. There is merit, but what is happening in our country also, that when we appoint, look what we had the election, the rigmarole that we went through in 5 months, and people were questioning when the case was appealed and go in front of this judge and that judge for a decision. And you can see that it was evident in some cases in the Court of Appeal that that is the way it worked. It worked in favor of the coalition when I look at this case. And this is one of the biggest problems that we face. And Mr. Jonas is apt. We should not look at the judge who will be in favor of any political party. We must use the criteria, a judge who will execute the right decision for the benefit of our society, our government, and our country. Not as a Indian party, PVP party, or a PNC party, or whatever it may be. And the appointment must come in such a meritorious way that we must respect that system. And this is where this politics of the day has bring us into these dual things that we face in our life. And people lost confidence in the system. If I'm Indian, I'm not going to get a fair trial with a black judge. If I am black, then there is a problem. If I'm an Indian judge and you're a black person, it means therefore you go with a guilty feelings, you're going to go to jail. It should not be. It must be an equitable system and if we don't start to get out from this notion, something will definitely happen. We are not going to find ourselves and we will have chaos in our society. So I will have to subscribe that we have to now, and this is the chance that we have the resources, we have the capacity, we have people who can change the system, but we have to be rational and we must not use our political affiliation to do what is right for our country.
So the very next question then is, do we have a justice system that is fair, Mr. Jonas? I mean, I don't want you to get into trouble and run in front of some judge who would, but...
As I said, in my professional life, it is only recently that for the first time we're doing our duty by the society. Let's leave politics alone because we've just had a storm where political based litigation has been going on. I'm going to put that to one side. Insofar as civil trials are conducted, I think we are at long last doing our duty by the society. Insofar as criminal litigation is concerned, we still have a ways to go, but we are better now than we were 10, 15 years ago. We need more judges, but our judges have been remarkable in their ability to maintain their independence and execute their duties professionally and dispassionately on a general day-to-day basis. Now, I know the perception that my friend Ramayya talking about, and there are some solutions to that. You know, 100 years ago, the court in the West Indies was a single court, and the court used to travel. It used to go St. Lucia, Trinidad, Guyana, Jamaica. It used to go around. Even more recently, when we were colonies, judges would travel within the Commonwealth from one country to another, and over the course of years would spend a few years in one country and another. I think that that kind of system can be restored, maybe on a limited basis, but it can be restored in the Caribbean. The office of a judge is no less important than the office of a minister, and certainly more important than those rubber stamp parliamentarians that we have. And if we can elevate the perks of the office to an extent that a Jamaican or a Trinidadian or a St. Vincentian or a St. Lucian or a Barbadian is happy to rotate, and we can synchronize our system so the system is the same throughout the islands, I am sure that there isn't a Guyanese that would be worried if a Jamaican or a Trinidadian or a Barbadian judge was trying his case, even if it was a political case. And perhaps that kind of rotation in a formalized CARICOM structure might solve a lot of the problems you're talking about, and would also stop the isolation that we've had over the last 50 years. You see, our jurisprudence has been constrained because of poverty, because of lack of resources. And maybe if we spread our wings by that kind of exposure, we would see the kind of growth that we need. But there are solutions. In non-political issues, though, I will say no, that our judiciary has demonstrated independence, has demonstrated professionalism, and in the last 3, 4, 5 years has been getting the job done. I'm satisfied.
Well, at this stage, we should take a short commercial break, and we'd be back with more on the issue of accountability and transparency.
All From One Supplier is pleased to announce its online shipping for West Indian and American groceries. Order online at allfromonesupplier.com and with free shipping and deliveries to any part of the United States. Save time and energy to shop for all of your West Indian groceries from the safety of your home or office. We carry West Indian products like curry powders, meats and fish, dashing bush, pepper sauce, sodas, and your favorite snacks. All From One Supplier has it all. All From One Supplier fulfills and ships your order directly to you. So visit All From One Supplier today to start shopping, or call All From One Supplier at 718-551-3292 to handle all of your West Indian grocery needs. That's All From One Supplier, 718-551-3292. Free shipping, free deliveries, or curbside pickup from allfromonesupplier.com. Travelspan is pleased to announce that the airport in Guyana is now open. There are flights from New York and Miami non-stop to Guyana. Call Travelspan for all your travel needs to Guyana or for your vacation to Mexico or Punta Cana. Call 718-845-0437 That's 718-845-0437. Flights are now on sale to Guyana, and vacation packages are now on sale to Mexico and Punta Cana. Call 718-845-0437.
And we're back. We were discussing the judiciary. Perhaps we should take a look at some of the appointments to high public office. There are people who have been appointed and their qualifications would have been questionable, to say the least. In a society where we demand transparency and accountability, should we have a body, perhaps akin to the US Senate, that would ratify the appointment of some people rather than leaving it to the government? Mr. Ramayya?
I will absolutely agree with you that an independent body to cross-examine a person for that position, like what we do for judges over there, and it is such an important aspect. But when you have the appointment based upon a political party or your commitment to a party, then we don't believe that office will properly execute it, that the duty and biases will be there. But when you're properly interrogated by a committee and know that if you're qualified for that position, I think that is transparency. You must be questioned. Which school you go to, where you graduated, how, all these things. Your character is a very, very pivotal aspect in getting a position in high offices. And all these things will be an asset. And people now will develop confidence in the system. But when you are appointed without being questioned, without being interrogated as to your background, then that position is not highly respected. Especially professional people will not look up to that office. And if we start to do something, there's a starting point. And Mr. Jonas was saying that. We don't start in the middle. There is a beginning. And if we take that initiative to start at this juncture, I believe we will have a transparent society. We must, and that is the nail that you hit there, that we must have a committee. And the same thing I was talking about, all the ministries, that we have a body, an oversight body, that you carry a complaint to, because you will not get through with a minister. But you can go to this oversight body and lodge your complaint and let it take the struggle up to the minister to get things done for the sake of the people. And this is all I always believe in, helping people. And I believe now this is the opportunity with all the resources, especially with the oil, that we should develop a system, a good system. It takes some time, a system that people must get confident in and not to be discouraged in any respect, that this is a political appointee. If I am black, I will be found guilty. We should not allow that to happen.
This brings us to the whole question of making the government listen. If civil society believes that this is the way to go, who will bell the cat? At what forum can we get the government to sit and listen to these recommendations? Mr. Jonas?
You know, it's three old men talking to each other here.
You're not old, son.
Jonas, I'm not old.
And the two
You're
oldest
still a
in
baby.
forum. We all have personal knowledge of the last 40 years of Guyana. And we want to say some civil society, some civic society, some group is going to persuade Burnham or Chetty or Jagdio or Ramatara or Granger to give up some of the power that is so sweet? Come on. So don't let's go there, because that starts a finger pointing again. Each of them in turn, when they're in opposition, talk about reform. And each of them, when they get in power, forget about reform and start appointing their friends and their family to positions and awarding contracts to their partners and happily spending a dime, getting a nickel's worth of service, but sharing the rest of the money with the contractor. So don't let's speculate on, oh, how are we going to do this? We're not going to go in to talk to any minister, whether he's a PPP minister or an APNU minister, to say, oh, please do the right thing. Let's change the system. They won't change the system. They won't do it for you. They won't do it for you. So we got to find a way to change the system ourselves. And the solution is so simple. I keep repeating it. I think maybe it's a good thing we got this forum because they got three of us. It's an odd number. So allow me to give this example. Trevor Ben was put in by APNU as a loyal APNU supporter to run lands and surveys. He replaced a PPP supporter who was running lands and surveys. He's an Afro-Guyanese and his predecessor is Indo-Guyanese. There are 100 examples like that, 1,000 examples if you go back 50 years. And let me give you what I think is the solution. The person who put Trevor Ben there was the minister, himself steeped in our political ugliness, part of the problem. The person who put Ben's predecessor was the minister from the other side, steeped in political ugliness, part of the problem. If the legislation that creates lands and surveys says lands and surveys will have a board who appoints the CEO, who appoints the commissioner, and let me be brave enough, please, to say, we're the board. I'm going to appoint y'all, I'm sorry, but I'm going to do it based on racism. So my friend Ramayya is the PPP appointee, and my friend Harris is the APNU appointee. And I'll take the third road. Right? I'm the third party appointee. The three of us sit down and say, hey, we need a commissioner of lands. Who do we appoint? We have to act by majority. So two of us got to agree. Now Ramayya is in government. Adam, you in opposition. I can never win because the two of y'all got the party base. But I'm the third voice in this thing. Two of us have to agree. So we agree we appointed Ben because he's the best qualified. If the third man vex, he vex, but at least it was done in front of him. He can go to the public and quarrel. He can say, look, this man isn't qualified. I asked for Prasad. Prasad is more qualified. I was outvoted. So the whole world knows that we did wrong, but we've appointed Ben. The government changes. You get elections and the government changes. So Ramayya, you're not in government anymore. Adam Harris is in government. Ben's position is not threatened because it's the three of us still there despite the change of government, and it's the three of us have the power to hire or fire Ben. Ben can afford to be a professional. He was hired by a majority of us. He could only be fired by a majority. And therefore, he continues unaffected in his position and therefore has the luxury of openly saying, I'm an APNU man, I'm a PPP man, hopefully he's a third force man, but he's not threatened by a change of government because it's us three on the board. How the government change, it don't matter. That is the solution to Guyana's problems. It can work, central housing, GPL, Guywa, it can work all over. Van West Charles want to get appointed if it's the three of us. And the professional who was appointed to Guywa wouldn't be fired with a change of government if it was the three of us on the board. He would have security of tenure. He could be a professional. He would be appointed on merit. He would stay when there's a change of government, and we would have continuity, less corruption. That's our solution, gentlemen.
No,
Our political culture, Mr. Adams, our political culture must change. And what Mr. Jonas is saying is not because a new party come into force that we must get rid of the person who are there. And if you have a body to appoint someone, unless that person is not performing, although he may be qualified but not performing, that's a different scenario altogether. However, this type of system, because as soon as another party assumes office, they fire the person from the previous, who occupied the job from a previous government. And that should not be. That is going to create chaos in our society, and the racial barrier will intensify. So when the other party comes into power now, actually you can see that is a vengeance. I want to get rid of this man, and I want to put my own people in that position. It should not be. Once you can execute the duty of that office, I still believe that you should stay there. This is my take on this whole thing. And the example that Mr. Jonas gave is a typical good example, not only in housing or lands and survey, wherever it is applicable. Government should look at the little things that can take a country, and we can break this barrier. This whole concept of race and race voting, and I listened to Mr. Jonas, and this is one of the reasons also that a third force was initiated to break the two-party state that we have today, is to break the two-party state. That this will continue for another 100 years if we don't start to educate our people and to show. And we must be open ourselves and the issues that a political party will do for the people. We must not subject ourselves based on race to vote. That is the biggest barrier today. And once we prolong our political ideology on that line, the society will always polarize. We will not be able to change this, and Mr. Jonas knows that. And he talks about we have to bring everybody in. We are a team. We are a nation. We have a same destination. All of us want betterment. All of us want to be happy. All of us want to live and get a job. We don't find ourselves in that category today. And when you see Indian people take over the black position job, but I want to say something here. I got a good friend, and he was saying about jobs. And I said, you know something, I don't feel that we are racially employing people here with this government. I'm not defending this government. But if you look at the employment rate, 98% of Afro-Guyanese are working with the government. In the police force, civil servants, the army, and there is a notion here that Indian people do not want, they want to be independent to make their own money. But if we look at the ratio, the percentage of Afro-Guyanese that occupy jobs with this government, it's tremendous. It's tremendous. And what the question is, how do we integrate the whole society? How do we get things done without racial dislikes? How do we go forward? And you know what happened? The leadership is betraying our people. I started at West Coast Berbice when those two boys were killed. That was racially motivated. In my opinion, it was. And the whole question here now, the leaders who went there from APNU, what they have done, they intensify the situation. Instead of throw water to the situation, they pour gasoline. It was wrong whosoever killed those two cousins, and then afterward this Indian boy. This is something that we have to look at. We have to integrate people and leadership from all political aspect, all political parties must take that initiative to bring our society together. The leadership people follow the leadership. And if you're going to preach hate, segregation, racism, we are not going to get anywhere. I don't care if you got 10 parties in this country. It will continue to be the same thing. The ideologies is going to remain the same. I don't know what Mr. Jonas takes on this here. I would like to ask him that his opinion on this.
I want to make just an observation. The PPP government did try to integrate or try to expand the base. The result was a University of Guyana campus at Tain. And we know that Tain is in the heart of the Indian community. We were hoping that more Indians would go to the university because the Georgetown University was predominantly, well, was largely black. It tried to set up police training schools. There was one on the Escobar Coast, the Richard Feichel. There was Adventure, yes.
Yes, Adventure, yeah.
But of interest is the fact that the number of applicants didn't change. How do you effect a change when people generally don't gravitate to a particular job? There is a book from third world to first, the Singapore story. Interesting book. Timothy, I don't know if you know it, but I can lend it to you. It shows how Singapore was at the same position of Guyana back in the 60s, and today it's about 400 years ahead of Guyana. And they had the same ethnic problem with the Malays and all of that. And Lee Kuan Yew solved that problem easily. There was forced recruitment in many cases. Do you recommend forced recruitment to balance the situation that Mr. Jonas first spoke about, that you, Mr. Ramayya, spoke about the preponderance of Africans in the police force, Africans in the army, Africans in the public service? Do we have forced recruitment?
No, we don't have that. When I went to United States in the late 70s, early 70s, the Vietnam War was there. Once you have a residency over there, you have to join and to serve the army for 2 years. When I look at the whole aspect of what, once you reach the age of 18 years, you have to register to serve your country. And I think that is one of the things I would like to see here. If we have to balance the forces in Guyana, that is one of the ways that even if Indian people, the Indian base, which is PBP, that is where we can have more integration. That once you attain the age of 18 years, you must serve your country. There's no defense for that. You have to sign and agree to go into the army unless you're physically disabled. But here we don't have it. And Ravi Dev and we talked about that in 2000 when I was with Roar. And this is an inscription that is so effective. You're talking about Singapore. It takes not a whole heap of money to do that. Ideas that is coming on this program. Like I think Dr. Rose, I think he's probably listening. He was telling Mr. Ali, our president, and Dr. Jagdeo, that we should take a university now to Linden. That those people from Linden has to travel all the way to Georgetown to come to a university. And to give somebody an opportunity, look at the distance they're coming, and traverse back and forth. That will be a good thing. So what happens sometimes in what we are facing today, sometimes we got to take the type of education, the type of hospital to the communities. And this is not done. And it was not done in the last 5 years. I was orchestrating these things. But what happened? Every person who had that power, greed took them over. Selfishness took them over, and they looked for their own personal pockets. They were not looking at the interests of the people. And we have saw so much of skullduggery that was done, and it done previous to that too. However, are we going to continue with the same aspect and to have progress in our country? It will never happen. So all these things that we discussed and we talked about, if it is implemented, I think we can go somewhere. But this two-party state gonna be a difficult thing if we continue to be on that aspect. And I think I listened to Mr. Jonas a few times on the same program, and he was talking about the third force, that we need to break this barrier. Unless the two parties, the two major parties, come together and say, well, look, we're going to do inclusiveness. Do we have inclusiveness in Guyana? This is a next subject matter that we can talk about, inclusiveness. Where is this inclusiveness? But it's coming to a point. It's coming to a point that the third force is already in Guyana, because the PNC or the PPP do not have 50% of the population. So now we have to now talk about Mr. Schuman. He has to now join with the party now to give the party victory, because they are 16 to 17% votes, the Amerindians. How we will bring those people in? How we will bring that ideology into him and his people, that we need your 15% or 16% to give us victory in the next coming election. I think what we need now is inclusiveness to take Guyana forward.
I want to go back a bit. Someone posted that if there is forced recruitment, then we have a dictatorship. Right or wrong, Mr. Jonas?
Well, I'm sorry, but I disagree with you completely on that. If I don't want to go and march and carry gun, nobody wants to make me go and march and carry gun. We also have cultural issues. People don't want the girl children go and subject themselves to that kind of thing. A lot of families took the decision not to send the girl children to university on the Burnham days because of exposure to that. Now, my friend Ramayya made a point that I don't agree with, and I want to discuss it. He said that the reality is that under the PPP, the position remained and was not changed, that the public service continued to be peopled predominantly by Afro-Guyanese. That is the truth, of course. Can't deny it, indisputable. But that's not where it's important. Where it's important is at the top level. At the top level, from the permanent secretary to the senior managers in the agencies and in the state-owned corporations, they are peopled by party loyalists on both sides. So under the PPP, when you walk into NISIL, I'm sorry to say it, but it's true because I had the experience. You look around and you see predominantly Indo-Guyanese at the higher level. Anybody earning more than $250,000, chances are. And similarly, 2-3 years ago, when you walk in Lands and Surveys and you look around, anybody at a high management level is Afro-Guyanese. So it's true that at the lower levels, it's peopled by Afro-Guyanese, but that's almost irrelevant because them poor boys earning $100,000, $120,000, $150,000. Our solution is that we have to raise salaries of our public servants, our teachers, our nurses, and our police. We have to raise those salaries exponentially so that there's a competition for those jobs. That is the solution. Now, as you said, and you're right about this, the corruption in Guyana, the corruption in government occurs largely with the award of contracts. This is why before 2015, although you didn't see any increases in teacher salaries, you saw schools getting built all over the place, because that's where the money was. You pay to build a school, that got kicked back. You don't get kicked back by raising the teacher's salary. We have to direct our revenue to increasing salaries of teachers, so that although we know now it is predominantly Afro-Guyanese, we are condemning those Afro-Guyanese to poverty by the money we pay them. If you increase the salaries of a policeman, predominantly Afro-Guyanese, where he is now, he's condemned to poverty. He can't buy his house. He can't send his children to private school. So, although he may be secure in a job, he's secure and condemned to poverty till he retires. Pay him properly, because if he goes abroad, and as our boys migrate, and it always happens, you migrate, you do the same job abroad, and suddenly you feel you're rich, because at long at last you're making ends meet. Allow the man to make ends meet. Let him send his child to private school. He will become a member of the middle class. He will have his own house. When your son wants to be a policeman, you will be proud, because there is a competition for the job simply because it is so well paid and so respected. And that is when you will see greater competition, greater professionalism within the job, and you will see the results. When I was in school, when I was of school age, I have memories of teachers. The other lady, Mrs. Jagan at St. Margaret's, Fredo at Queen's College, Miss Rollins at Queen's College. Man, people of quality. Trots, both Clarence and Leroy Trots. People that can stand up in any society and have a conversation with a diplomat, with a president, or with a cane cutter. We lost those people because of how much they are paid. Trots went to Bahamas. His brother went up to the States, went up to Canada. It is unforgivable that we expose our children to the remnants who are paid so poorly that we scrape in the bottom of the barrel, and we are seeing some poor specimens going to teach. There are some good ones left, but there are no Trotses. It's time to change that. It's time to improve the quality by paying them so they can stand up shoulder to shoulder and feel like they're respected members of society. That is one of the large injustices that we do.
At this stage, we go to a second commercial break, and I would like you to address your minds to the issue of, you remember that example I gave of the three-party committee to appoint the heads of lands and surveys, geology and mines, those committees, that would require parliamentary regulation or parliamentary involvement. Perhaps we could address that when we come back.
All From One Supplier is pleased to announce its online shipping for West Indian and American groceries. Order online at allfromonesupplier.com and with free shipping and deliveries to any part of the United States. Save time and energy to shop for all of your West Indian groceries from the safety of your home or office. We carry West Indian products like curry powders, meats and fish, dashing bush, pepper sauce, sodas, and your favorite snacks. All From One Supplier has it all. All From One Supplier fulfills and ships your order directly to you. So visit All From One Supplier today to start shopping, or call All From One Supplier at 718-551-3292 to handle all of your West Indian grocery needs. That's All From One Supplier, 718-551-3292. Free shipping, free deliveries, or curbside pickup from allfromonesupplier.com. Globespan 24x7 continues its efforts to serve the communities. The platform provides for all sides to air their views and discuss solutions. Viewers in Guyana and across the world are participating in these discussions. Globespan's platform offers Guyanese an opportunity to express their concerns and discuss solutions in the political realm, thereby addressing the polarized situation. Discussions also include social ills, such as alcoholism, domestic violence, and suicides that have been plaguing the people. The Globespan 24x7 platform connects the diaspora and the world with Guyana. So become a supporter of Globespan 24x7 today by clicking the badge icon on the lower right side of your screen. For only $10 a month, you will be a supporter of Globespan 24x7 initiative and have a badge displayed on your Facebook profile. Help us to continue to serve the communities.
Welcome back to the program. Just before we left, I suggested that there should be some parliamentary involvement in the operation of these quasi-government agencies like GGMC, like Lands and Surveys, and the other entities like NISIL, even if it comes to that. Should Parliament attempt to make legislation to remove these entities from the purview of a particular government minister? Mr. Ramayya?
I strongly subscribe to that notion that it should come through the parliament, that we need a committee, especially for offices, and that the person, as Mr. Jonas said, it should not change in the course of another election. We should continue to, once they can function in that capacity, we should keep those people there. And in this way, we know that we have profound individuals to give us the best in what that office has to offer. I will tell you something that is happening, that when we try to dictate based on our politics and our political affiliation, that office will still become corrupted. Once we have a transition from one government to another government, just like what Mr. Jonas said, contractors. Every government is take the initiative to give contracts. They're not concerned about the people's salary. And the more we can look into the people's salaries, you will find that corruption, you will avoid getting corruption, stealing, people going and use drugs. They'll be attracted to a job. So many people are graduating, but there are no jobs. And one of the things that when I was campaigning for the PPP, there are many things, but it's premature to say now whether the government will deliver, create jobs. And we have now the resources that I am hoping that jobs will be created, that income. You must earn an amount of money to pay your bills. You must overcome your bills. Give your children good education, extra lessons, but you must also have a saving. That is a good income. Today, people cannot save. And the initiative, the incentives are not there for people to take a government job. $70,000 per month minimum wage is not going to do you any good. And I believe that is one of the things that Indian people do not want to take a government job because of the salary. I may be wrong, but the way I look at it, it is true. So directly, all these things we talked about, and they formed this committee to run certain particular office. It should not base on the politics and the affiliation of which party you belong to. If we continue, we are not going to change. We want to change. We want betterment. How will the betterment will come? This is one of my objectives when I started into this life, is to how to make poor people get out from that position that they are today. So many people are begging. Look, we have this pandemic that is going on. People are literally starving, some of people. They can't get money. I went to Rosal Market today. You have sellers, you do not have buyers. How are we going to address the situation? This is a problem with this pandemic that we are facing today.
I want us to go to the need for the involvement of Parliament. Mr. Jonas, you were making an interesting point that once there is a majority in Parliament, then whatever you come up with would be government owned. But there have been bipartisan votes in Parliament on some issues. Can we modify the legislation that set up these agencies, some of which I named a short while ago?
All of them. The AFC should have done it. The AFC wasted everybody's time. laziness, incompetence, I don't know what it was, but they didn't. I can give you a dozen examples because the structure is the same in every area that you look at. Central housing is not government. Central housing is created by Parliament. It is created by an act of Parliament. Now, central housing has a board, and the Housing Act says the board shall be appointed by the minister. Guess who? By the minister. So you take the minister responsible for housing, and he appoints the 7 people on the board. They're all his friends. If you had a majority in Parliament, a majority of 1, AFC could have done it. You amend that to say the board shall comprise 3 appointed by the minister, 3 appointed by the leader of the opposition, and 1 appointed by the largest third party. And suddenly, that board is the committee that Ramayya wants. That board represents all of us. It represents you, Adam, it represents Ramayya, and it represents me. And when we appoint our CEO at Central Housing, this board here, by majority decision, and the government changes, that CEO doesn't lose his job. Because you were in government last time, you still only get 3 when you're in opposition. You're in opposition, you still only get 3 on the board. Now you're in government. And the third party gets the swing. So that the person that we appointed last 5 years, he's not threatened. Because it's the same representation on the board, the same people discussing, and he would have been appointed on merit. Because if he wasn't, somebody would have gone to the public to say why. I'll give you example after example. Tell me when you're tired. Guywa is created by the Guywa Board, Guyana Water Inc. And that act says the minister will appoint the board. The Petroleum Act says the minister will appoint the Petroleum Commission. The GPL board is appointed by the government. The EPA, our friend was recently removed, says the EPA board shall be appointed by, guess who? The minister. Because historically in Guyana, government controls Parliament by having a majority, every act passed in Parliament is passed at the dictate of the government, and they don't share. So they say, my minister will decide who's on that board. And that's how you get sale of oil blocks to people unknown at an unknown time. Because who controls that? The Petroleum Commission. And who appoints the Petroleum Commission? The minister. Now, if that Petroleum Commission was appointed by an act of Parliament, by you, Adam, appointed by the opposition, by you, Ramayya, appointed by government, and by me, the third force, we would know about the oil blocks. And when the government changed, we still would know about the oil blocks. It's the easy, simple solution. But a government with a majority in Parliament will never do it. Because those oil blocks, the broadcasting, we had a big story about radio licenses. Somebody made a lot of money selling radio licenses. Guess who appoints the board? Adam, you might know about that because that's your area. The minister. Each act, each of those areas, it's the minister that appoints his cronies, and he's acting on the dictate of the president. So it's all family and friends. It's all secret deals. If all you need is the majority in Parliament of 1 to amend those pieces of legislation, not to take power to yourself, but to say power must be shared. Leader of the opposition has the right to appoint 3. Government appoints, minister appoints 3. The largest third party appoints 1. That's the end of it. Another example I'll give you is the Procurement Act. We know, I won't discuss who appoints the Procurement Board, but the Procurement Board was being paid $1 million a month each. Now I sat down on the Fair Trade Commission Board, another important board. I didn't expect to be paid. The government came in 2015, asked me to chair it, I chaired it. To my astonishment, I got a check in an envelope, $7,000. That is more corruption. I don't want to be paid, doesn't matter to me, but it offends me that you put your friend on the public procurement and you're paying them $1 million. That's corruption. So an act of Parliament needs to say that every single board and every single commission, unless we otherwise specifically say, you get 75,000 a month, and if you're chairman, you get 125. Let's get rid of the secret deals. Let's get rid of this cronyism. You can do so much without one swing vote in Parliament.
Point taken. And since the question of oil was introduced, I would like us to introduce a clip that was taken from the Glenlal show. Let's have a look at that clip.
Guyanese, what is going on in this land? What is really going on in this land with our leaders and our oil? Exxon announced in 2015 massive oil find. In 2020, we are being handed a bill for almost 20 billion American dollars. A bill in which none of us had any say. And that bill, Guyana has to foot. No word from the PPP, no word from the PNC, no word from the AFC. What is happening in this land? It's like having a business with a partner, and the man just keep handing you bills, and bills, and bills, and you have to pay that. What a moron can we be? How much more can we get? Where are we going?
Okay, that was Mr. Lal talking about the whole question of the oil contract we signed and what's happening at this stage. The Petroleum Act is governed by a minister. Any reaction to Mr. Lal's comment on that clip?
Yes,
Mr. Ramayya?
I think the people who negotiate the deal with Exxon, they are not expert in oil. It is a big injustice that is done to the Guyanese public. Ms. Janki, Mr. Mangal, I believe, they are people with experience. Politicians should not indulge with oil. You have to get the knowledge and that wisdom. You have to know what is good for this nation. Look what is happening in Suriname. You need the oil, you dig for the oil. You spend your own money and dig for the oil. You explore the oil. And after you explore the oil, then we're going to work out the percentage, what I will have and what you will have. In this situation in Guyana, we allow these people to go. We didn't even monitor it based upon all that I read in the Kaito news. It was not monitored as to the amount of money that was spent for the exploration of the oil. But we receive a bill. It's just like somebody come to your house, you got a birthday, they cut on piece cake and they give it to you and they take the whole cake away. This is what Exxon did to all of us. What is left? And I always look back at Paul Tennessee with the experiment that he did with his student. And it showed that third world countries were taken advantage of by Exxon. That 99% of the third world country, the poor people never see a cent of the money. Nigeria is a typical example. Where is the money? One person got the money, 96 million people are starving. They're under poverty. And here I believe what Mr. Jonas is saying. We need committees. We need people with experience that who can sit there with experienced people who knows about oil and can make the best use to benefit this nation. And this was not done. Then when Mr. Tratman went and signed the contracts, that was one of the biggest mistakes. Remember, Mr. Mangal was here, and Mr. Mangal said to Mr. Granger that you have a wheelbarrow, push a bunch of people around who has no experience. And what they did, they get Mr. Ranger to just ship him out back from Guyana. But he made a statement. And this is where we stand today, Mr. Harris. Do you believe, you strongly believe, that the people of Guyana, with all the oil discovery that we have, and I listened to Mr. Lal, that the people of Guyana will be better? Mr. Jonas has talked about salaries. Do you think that the revenue from the taxes will generate that amount when we have all these resources? No. because I think I read in 2025 we will owe over $50 billion to Exxon for the exploration. We don't even know the amount of money that they spent exploring the oil. Who is keeping an account from these people here? Nobody. I don't know what now. But the oil is not going to benefit. I don't see how the oil is going to benefit this nation. Mr. Jonas, your take.
He's right. Your take, Mr. Jonas.
I saw with amazement when Chairman say, "Don't read the thing before you sign it." And I saw with equal amazement when Jordan, another one who was power drunk, looked at the people of Guyana and would not tell them if he'd signed this thing and what he done with the signing bonus that belonged to me and you, what he done with our money. That kind of belligerence is unforgettable and unforgivable. And the underlying incompetence is unforgettable and unforgivable. Their predecessors were no better because oil blocks were given away to paper companies and resold at enormous profit, and none of us the wiser. We need transparency. Transparency will expose all of this. But all of those acts of incompetence and corruption were possible because it was all done in the secret enclave of the minister who had all the power. And we need to change that just with a simple amendment to allow both sides to be present to see what's going on. That is so important.
Just one quick observation. When oil was found, the story goes that they had 2 wells to drill. And if Exxon had come up with one more dry hole, they would have pulled out of Guyana and we would have not been any better. They had Skipjack and Liza 1. They made a determination to drill Liza 1 and Cannon. Had they drilled Skipjack, Guyana would not have had oil. Based on that, it is said, Guyana tried to get a small piece because even Guyana did not believe that it had oil. Hence, the confusion going back to when Mrs. Jagan signed that initial agreement with the 1%, and Exxon holding out, and the coalition managed to get 1% more. I don't know if that helps the situation as it relates to what transpired. But the bottom line is, indeed, we need to review and revamp whatever arrangement there is. Will there be a review or a revamp? I don't know.
Sorry, I don't agree with you, Adam. At the time that Mrs. Jagan signed that contract, there were very good indications. So there's a lot of hope. But you're right, no one had found anything. So it was a speculation. But what she signed was a prospecting arrangement. And that agreement contemplated that in the event that commercial deposits were found, they would sign a new agreement. So I don't let the coalition off the hook, because when they negotiated and signed up, it was because commercial deposits had been found. And therefore they had a lot more knowledge, and we should have been a lot happier. And 1% doesn't change to 2% in those circumstances. So there was huge incompetence when it was done. And the only voice in the darkness, Mangal, was unceremoniously chopped out. We really, as a people, are forgiving of our leaders. We are very, very forgiving.
But the question is, Mr. Jonas, when that agreement for the exploration of oil, that was not the bad part of the whole issue here. But the bad part, after the oil was found with this coalition government, I mean, I was with them. That was the bad part, not having an expert, a person who knows about oil, to negotiate for Guyana. They never did that. They went on their own. But when you have a contract and you sign a contract, the person that you sign the contract with, that person will have to be in agreement to change the contract because you already signed a contract that is binding. I mean, from a legal terminology, that is the only, and Exxon is not going to reverse unless something miraculous happens. But they are holding out to the 2%. But when the coalition signed, I was very, very annoyed that we have actually giving away our resources, our oil, to a foreign country. But Exxon is good at this. Exxon is not a company that you can trust. All throughout the world, they have done this. But they are smart people. They are smart people who get people who knows about oil to negotiate for them.
That's a whole new program.
Yes, it is.
All right. Gentlemen, it was nice having you here, and we had a pretty warm discussion. I think it's time that we wish our other listeners and viewers a good night, because we have come to the end of this program, and I hope that we can do it again sometime in the future.
Nice talking to you, Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Thank you, Mr. Jonas.